The Crooked Epic, 1 The Inn of Maniacal Madness, 11, Christopher, the Airplane, 11B, 2. He reached down into the long harnesses of the cart which hung around his waist, pulling it up behind him. The veil of fog was pushed aside, and he continued out under the grass as he tried to get the men's attention. Jed, Clarence, don't walk close to the church. His loud whisper was almost a hiss, and he saw the backs of the men as they became visible again. But the two men were unmoving and transfixed on the biological spectacle which lay before their feet. Gerard turned his head back to Christopher, asking, Chris, is this what you actually meant about the other world? In front of Clarence and Gerard was a catastrophic scene of destruction. A conflagration across the cemetery had raised the dead and destroyed a portion of the field behind the church. There were burned bodies, skeletal remains, and scorched earth in all directions, centering around the enormous behemoth. The church was gone, and between the cavern and barely distinguishable foundation was the carcass of the giant black bear which had sprung Alexander from captivity within the warehouse far to the northeast. Its enormous body sprawled down against the graves. Its tongue was hanging, and its eyes, half open, were void of life. Its fur had been blazed off, and skin was charged, bleeding from hundreds of gunshot wounds, and its throat had been cut. No, no, now all right. We have to move back as fast as possible to the field. Take our cover in the tall grasses. Mr. Good waved Clarence and Gerard back. As they passed behind the cavern entrance, Mr. Good quickly went back into the fog. Inside, he placed another radio antenna unit and stared deep into the tunnel's darkness like a souvenir. The once unwelcoming and moist, dark, and foreboding catacomb that led to Hob was now a surreal visage, the open mouth of a portal back home. Christopher hurried back to the heated humidity of the burned graveyard, the stench of decay behind the fog, impending war under the alien sky. He picked up his cart's reins and followed behind the hills of the green field. A noise from behind the tall, waving leaves of the field pierced the decimated landscape, a peal of abrupt, menacing laughter, loud and antagonizing and unseen. The three men slowed down, and the hills turned to Mr. Good for his prerogative instruction. Mr. Good winced at the sound's source and double-checked the deserted yards behind them, but saw no reason not to keep moving forward. He was also worried the man could use distracting laughter to alert nearby soldiers. Chris, I think I recognize that voice, Clarence interrupted Mr. Good's continued onward march. He shoved on Christopher's elbow, and Christopher slowed down, listening harder as the laughter began to peter out. Yet Mr. Good did not stop walking, and although Gerard had hesitated, they all moved together, closer to the ominous field's mysterious vocalizer. As the approach tightened the perimeter, the laughter had disappeared, and Christopher leaned forward with one hand to the tall, green, waving grass blades and pushed them aside. A murder of crows rose from the field, and the sky blurred and shadowed the ground, with their wings flying away in the direction opposite the men. Christopher Good reached for his gun, sensing how the person watching was preparing for an assault. Clarence and Gerard Hill stared in shock as Christopher drew the weapon out of its holster on his belt. There was a faint and muffled sound of a rifle's load chamber closing in the field, and Mr. Good let off his shot. There was a grunt and then a thudding noise of a body landing on the ground, falling through grass, and then a moaning grasp. Clarence started running through the weeds, and Gerard followed, both wobbling under the weight of their packs. Christopher dropped the reins of the cart and held his gun in his right arm, pointed out straight while supporting it with his left forearm underneath. Suddenly, a shot was fired, and a bullet whizzed by Christopher's left side. Tommy! Chris, it's Tommy! Clarence's words were almost simultaneous with the gunshot. Clarence Hill yelled, and two more shots rang out, but sounded distinctly different and more like a pistol. Christopher Good had charged through the grass and saw Gerard Hill putting his gun back into his belt holster. Clarence was staring in shock at Gerard and spinning his head around to look at the body on the ground, which was Thomas Philippe's. Mr. Philippe lay next to a rifle and had bullet wounds which caused his foreign soldier uniform to become drenched in blood. He was shot near his left shoulder, under the rib cage, and in his forehead.